This is part 2 of the JoJolion arc tier list. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, follow the link in the top right corner or in the description of this video. I hope you enjoy it.
Okay, alright, this is
this is your territory.
Oh, is it?
Dawn
All
at
right,
the
so
Higashikata house.
I don't know how to feel about this chapter. It's the introduction of Kado Higashikata into the lives of the rest of the Higashikata family. We got a glimpse of Kado back during the Vitamin C arc, and that was its own thing. But this is where she really comes into her own as a character and essentially shouts, "Hey, pay attention to me." And that would be amazing if anything that was shown in this chapter ended up being anyway meaningful. Kado's character makes such an impression on you when you read this chapter for the first time.
She really does,
and she has so many different facets to her character that you just want to see more of. She has the rivalry with Narisuke, which their interactions are amazing. Then you also have Kado explaining her goals of she wants to have the years that she had spent in prison not go to waste, and she wants to take over the Higashikata fruit parlor, and that is her mission, and she will be compensated for everything that's happened so far. And then she has her animosity towards Gappy, which is really interesting. It makes you think, all right, what does it actually mean to be a member of the Higashikata family?
Right.
And then none of that is ever relevant again. It's not good enough to introduce important ideas or strong ideas that will interest the reader. It's important to actually develop your story in a way that will be engaging as it goes forward and answer the questions that the readers are
going to
asking themselves.
Yes, because it introduces a lot of questions.
The chapter introduces so much intrigue, and then the rest of the story doesn't follow up on that intrigue.
Right.
But I don't know whether I should hold that against the chapter itself or the rest of the story.
I would not hold it against the chapter too much, the chapter itself, but I would
It's a really compelling chapter on its own. It's just not followed through well enough.
I wouldn't put it above C. I would cap it at C.
I don't feel comfortable putting it on the same level as California King Bed. I think C is probably the place for it.
Okay.
All right, so this is going to be an interesting one. Dolomity's Blue Lagoon.
Blue Lagoon is an arc that I can't imagine if you were reading it monthly at this point. I was not there yet. I was not reading it monthly while this was coming out.
Neither was I.
But this arc does drag on a lot.
I'm going to be honest, I've kind of warmed up to Blue Hawaii as time has gone on.
Really? Okay, tell me why.
A lot of the part of Blue Hawaii is mostly just Gappy running away from the zombies that are produced by Blue Hawaii, and it's finding unique ways to jump around and get around them and stuff like that. And then ultimately he's done in by the child or toddler or whatever coming through the door, and he's like, I can't kill a kid.
But he has no gripes about harming anyone else.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like that. I think it's a very interesting way of showing where he draws the line, even if it's not necessarily a justifiable reason. If you asked him to explain his logic there, I think the fact that that's his first reaction to this kid coming through the door is very interesting.
It's telling.
It doesn't really make a lot of sense how the ability works, where he grabs
it
shoe
doesn't.
and it suddenly that zombifies Gappy. It's fine to look over that.
I like that this arc mixes the concepts of your traditional zombies being a sense of someone is controlled by someone else, but also the George Romero-esque type of zombie, undead, spitting out blood and gore and this and that.
I think an underrated part of this arc is Yasuho. Her solution at the very end to confront Dolomity directly, I think that was a very interesting turn of the tables. She's essentially doing the work for Gappy as he is trying to make his escape. She's essentially acting as his offense while he's acting on the defensive. The part with Jobin coming and essentially giving her a brain aneurysm, I guess, with his ability, that was actually kind of threatening.
Right, because it is okay, finally Jobin's interacting directly against our protagonists. But the only thing is, it's a turnaround. That happens one chapter, and the next chapter she's confronting Dolomite. And it's sort of hard to get a sense of how much time has passed. Josuke's still running, and then he's controlled by the zombies, right? So was Yasuho out for 2 seconds, or was she out for a couple hours? It's a little jarring on the reread. I don't disagree that I like that.
C tier, because I don't think it's better than I Am a Rock, but I don't think think it's on the level of California King Bed.
Okay, I'd be fine with C.
The
Land
Plan
Appraiser. These are nice 2 chapters.
Yep.
We got a little bit of downtime.
I like the introduction of Raimo Zuku, and I like his ski lift.
Yes, the ski lift. Okay, Superfly has always been one of my favorite stands for like stupid reasons. I like that this whole arc is sort of re-envisioning Superfly as a ski lift, right?
Yeah.
You have all of your gardening, you have all of your like ability to live up there. You know, he just chills on the ski lifts, and like it is fun. You get a lot of downtime. Yasuho and Gappy are enjoying each other's company, but it's also laying the groundwork, at least for the next arc.
We get like the small implications of Urban Gorilla like coming through during it, but for the most part, it's downtime. And like I said before, I feel like JoJo as a whole really needs more downtime in its story. And everything about Raimo Zuku and his life is just so interesting.
So like I would say it's on par with Fruit Parlor because we put downtime in B tier. I think that's very comfortable.
That's fair. And then Urban Gorilla proper. I like Do Re Mi Fa Sol La Ti Do.
I do too.
I like the mole, gopher, whatever dog thing.
A marsupial. Like I had people tell me, oh, you know, the next JoJo part's gonna take place in Australia. I'm like, there's no precedent for that. And it's like, yes, rock animals are technically marsupials. At least this one is. And it's like, oh.
I mean, we'll get to rock animals later, as
Right.
one is one of those things. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Anyway, the fight itself is a bit middling, but I like the moral dilemmas that Rai places Josuke in, with him pushing Yasuho off the ski lift. Like, something about that is really great.
Yes, it's so funny.
He's so good. But
Josuke Bibi Baka, you better pay attention to me. And it's like, no.
I like what it does for the main trio's characterization. Like, they're putting some interesting scenarios here. I'm not a big fan of Urban Gorilla.
I am not either.
He is
kind of very I think a lot of what he says about like the motivations for his group, the Doctors of the University, the Rock Humans, like their inevitable goals, right? We're gonna seek the new Locacaca and become something greater, and that really isn't delivered on. What is delivered on is the fact that we get a little information about how the bubbles work, the fact that they are spinning lines.
Yeah, that was at the very end
of
of
this.
That part's interesting, and it's decent setup for what comes later, even if I have issues with that, but that's not for here.
I would not
definitely not A tier.
B. I
Definitely
wouldn't even
not
put it
D.
in B.
I think
I'd
C
be
tier is
C
fair.
is fine.
Hair clip of the Qing Dynasty, I think, is a lot better.
Really, the plot relevance of the hair clip is never brought up again.
It's a similar scenario.
Nice aside.
It's a similar scenario to Dawn of the Higashikata household, except I think it's a bit better here because while we don't get the analysis of the hair clip that Yasuho promises for some reason, don't ask me why, we do get more information about the rock insects, and I feel if you took this chapter out of the story, the rock insects that come up in Wonder Review would be a lot worse.
They would. The fact that I barely even remembered this arc on the reread, I was like, oh yeah, this arc exists. The very first time it didn't leave any impression on me.
Really?
Yeah, I liked it going back through it, right? Especially with Yasuho's own internal conflicts. Again, like at least the very first time I read this, I barely remembered anything from this arc, which is very surprising. Like at least to me, I didn't find it as impactful. But like you're saying, with how the rock insects are introduced later, it's good to have this here now.
Personally, I don't even think the rock insects are the most important part of this chapter. I think it's all through Yasuho. We get a lot better understanding of her family life through this chapter and her relationship with her parents, which family is a big part of JoJolion, so I feel like that was kind of necessary. We get a lot of like little things like how her character reacts to essentially her father just leaving, skipping out on her. She's driven near to suicide, which I think that's like a reference to the movie Drive or something.
Yeah.
From what I've heard. I think a lot of that's very interesting. It shows her character in a new light that we haven't really considered, but I don't think it's amazing. I think it's
I would not put it on the same tier as Born This Way or Dubiwa.
Definitely not B.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as low as E either.
I might go
D?
I would be comfortable with it in D. It is good development for Yasuho, but she does
It doesn't overstay its welcome.
Right.
Poor Tom and Ozone Baby.
Right. Ozone Baby's pressure.
This is the first time that we see a team of Tsurugi and Jobin, and that's a fantastic team. Showing Jobin as a father is a great way to like show another aspect of his character that we wouldn't normally see, and everything that they do in this part, the very end where Jobin's holding Tsurugi and triumphantly holding up the branch and he's like, we won, we defeated defeated everyone.
That's a very good panel. I like that one a lot.
That part's great. The fact that Rai essentially implodes and nothing really comes about that when he got the
a single like small bit of brainstorm, he has to cut off his hand to literally implode.
Yeah,
like I'm fine.
It kind of makes sense considering what we know later on about him like disassembling himself to hitch a ride on the ambulance. That said, like in the moment, it just feels kind of cheap. C tier, maybe? I don't think it's on the level of...
Yeah, I think it's better than California King Bed. What I would say is that it's confusing why his allies sort of off him at the end of it. I never really understood that.
I think it's supposed to be like, hey, rock humans are like all for themselves and don't care about...
Right, you could say that.
One of their own. But like at the same time, it doesn't really make sense for them to in this moment.
Everything built up before that doesn't make sense because Damo's inquiring about what happened to all the rock humans before him. Aisho's inquiring about what happened to Yotsuyu before him.
They don't really have a reason to at this point.
Right.
Like, poor Tom's not a negative force for them at this point. He didn't betray them or anything. Like, they're kind of just like bringing down their army by one, essentially. They're just weakening themselves. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
The stand is cool. I like the Lego aspect. Big fan of Legos, especially those creator sets.
Like, even now, that just like doesn't even really like have a good reason for existing. It's just more JoJo bizarreness, which is fine, but like it just comes out of nowhere. Like a very specific Lego set of the US White House. Like what's Anyway,
it's so funny because there's totally a Tokyo creator set. I actually have that one.
Really?
It's like, yeah, you could have used something like that. It's wacky, it's interesting, but very average, I think. Yeah. I would say though, Dr. Wu, and I did not name this one correctly, Awakening 2 leaves, God, 3 leaves.
I gotta bump those leaves up.
I know. I would say I kind of love this arc.
Really?
I really do. I think Dr. Wu, at least his motivations, they're a little compelling because he wants to be at least the top of his field. And he has an ability, not even in a combat role, is actually indicative and helps him progress the practices he's trying to perform. And then Awakening 3 leaves.
Awakening 3 leaves is, yeah, fantastic. The whole idea of like using vectors in the physical space.
Yes, vector space.
To like move stuff.
I love that.
There's something really compelling about that. My main issue with this arc is I find Dr. Wu annoying. Very annoying.
He is annoying?
Like, he mentioned so many times, I am perfect. I have never failed at anything ever. Dr. Wu never fails. And then he just spends the entire arc. He just spends the entire arc doing nothing but failing. It makes no sense why he believes that, but hey,
well, it's kind of like if you know people who go to medical school and they're like, yes, I am so great. I got through all of my medical. Not that I'm making fun of any of the doctors in the audience. You know, I love the work that you do for everyone, but I certainly know people who have that superiority complex after they go through that. It does ground him, sort of, and I do love that Mitsuba is finally given a character, and her character is very sympathetic.
That's great. I also really like the fact that she's
back.
She's not outwardly just mom sympathetic. She is, all right, I am cheating my husband out of this money. I am closing the elevator door on old ladies just because I don't want to share it with them. She's very petty. She's still like, you want to be on her side.
She cares about her family. She even to some extent cares about Yasuho, who's trying to help her through her situation.
Yeah, Mitsuba's just so great.
For that, I personally would put it in A, but I could be comfortable in B.
Honestly, A is probably good for it. I'm not like amazing on Dr. Wu, but I think the fight itself is
good. But the fight itself is very good. Josuke coming at the end, it seems like it built up well enough.
Also, I don't like Toru.
Well, okay.
He's good in this arc.
He is introduced. That's all he's
introduced in a way that like he's immediately like, okay, what's this guy about?
You have the intrigue of this obvious character who's going to be important because of his design. He wouldn't be given the wacky hair if he wasn't going to be important. Well, the only thing I really don't like about this arc, and I actually counted, I had an Excel spreadsheet going of how many times the word equivalent exchange was mentioned throughout the whole part.
Oh, really?
I was counting, and like in almost every chapter in Dr. Wu, it's mentioned at least 5 times.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
That's the only thing that I just find sort of annoying about this part. And of course, Dr. Wu's own personality, but I do think it's fitting.
Sure, this belongs above Born This Way? I think it might actually belong in B tier.
Like I said, I'd be comfortable in B. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is on par with Born This Way.
Okay.
All right, the new Locacaca.
Okay, F tier.
Let's put it down there.
Do we need to justify this? I feel like we kind of have to. All right, so this is the only chapter in the entire part of JoJolion where I feel that if you cut it out of the story completely, JoJolion would be better off.
I 100% agree. Absolutely.
It is a negative force on JoJolion as a whole. Even if you can explain it at the very end through like some kind of bullshit about, oh, the flash forward is actually 2 separate scenes or whatever.
It's not. But okay, yeah, go on.
It just leaves the entire flash forward as feeling, okay, what was the point of this? It's not compelling. It's not clever. It doesn't give you a new perspective on the events of the finale. It's nothing. It doesn't belong in the story.
Yeah, it just doesn't.
It's just frustrating, and it kind of ruined JoJolion discussion for the entire Wonder Review arc. And oh my god.
It did. Because it was a misdirection. I feel like he had an idea of where he wanted to go, but didn't have all of the details planned out. And
right,
sort
and
of putting the
maybe
pieces
he wrote himself
together.
into a corner. Maybe he needed to like cut for time or something.
Right.
Maybe his editor said like, oh, maybe this isn't such a good idea.
Yeah, I don't even think it was a
It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter what happened. It doesn't make sense in the final story of JoJolion, regardless of what direction you interpret it from. It's a negative force on JoJolion as a whole.
Right. The only reason I don't think it's a time constraint is because we have our next arc lasting. If we're reading your thing, how long did this last? 20% of the entire part.
Okay, so I feel like we should actually leave this for second to last.
Okay. That's fine. We can leave this guy.
So let's go immediately to Ojiro.
A tier.
Yeah, that's fair. Ojiro is great. We get a return of Tsurugi and Jobin, which was already the best part of Ozone Baby, except now they're fighting Ojiro, and that's just fun. The whole thing with Jobin using his ability long range to like burn up the bill and affect Ojiro, but he's like not even in reach, so it doesn't implicate him. That's so great.
Cool. And just like Ojiro dicking around Morio at the beginning is so funny.
100% trash.
Yes, he is 100% trash.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
Ojiro Returns is great.
Yeah, I would say easy A tier. And then I think I labeled this one as Just Don't Move, but I think Just Don't Move's the chapter after this, because this chapter's Wonder If You Part 13.
Yeah, this is the chapter where Jobin and Norisuke have their discussion. I think it's S tier, genuinely. Really? Might be top 3 chapters in JoJolion.
Was this one of your favorites? Is this the one that it was?
We still haven't gone to my favorite, actually.
Okay. I'm a little hesitant on S tier, because it's sort of in direct conflict with
How is it in direct conflict? Like, what specifically?
Because it implies that Hato, Joshu, Daya don't know Norisuke's in the body bag.
Right, okay.
And that interaction is happening in front of them. So again, if you negate this, I can see your argument.
I think we just should, because that whole thing doesn't make any sense. So, like, even if we judge the rest of the story, you just can't think about that. Just leave that in F tier and, like, discuss this separately.
Now, another thing holding me back on S, I'm putting it on the cusp for now. What's holding me back on S is that when Wonder Review starts, Josuke and Rai split from Yasuho, and they make it very clear we're going to deal with Jobin later. This chapter sets up Jobin juxtaposing himself against the goals that Josuke and Rai are going for, and that just isn't delivered. So we could put this in S based on just the chapter itself, but I don't think Jobin's ideals are delivered on the rest of the Higashikata family to impact them enough through the rest of the arc.
I think the pure fact that this scenario is going on and essentially it leaves the entire family in a state of disarray, it's such a change from the status quo that I don't think it really matters too much whether or not Jobin follows through on it. So originally, when chapter 96 came out and Jobin said, Norisuke is alive, he's in a body bag upstairs, I was very disappointed because I felt that, okay, there's not really the proper result from the scenario. He essentially attacked Norisuke. It felt like there should have been consequences for that. But now seeing it with the entirety of JoJolion in proper scope, this chapter is so damn sad, man. This is the last time.
It is is
that
sad.
Jobin
Yeah.
is the last time Norisuke ever sees his eldest son.
Right.
And it's his eldest son attacking him, nearly killing him, and making him comatose. And
Right.
when he wakes up again, he is going to find out that his son is dead, essentially. The entire family is in disarray, and that is heartbreaking. There's so much meat to this specific chapter.
Just a
Like,
specific chapter, but
Yes.
like I said, I think they went a little derailing off of the things that were set up in this chapter.
I do think that, like, the fact that Jobin was never a proper antagonistic force outside of Everyday Summer Vacation kind of, like, does bring his character down a bit. But at the same time...
He explicitly says in Ozone Baby, I'm going to kill Josuke and Rai when they come to get the branch. That sort of is like the first, and like we said in Blue Hawaii, his first interaction with Yasuho sort of is to more impede what they're doing, but not really kill them. And then goes to Ozone Baby and he's like, yeah, I have no qualms about this, until he realizes Ozone Baby's affecting everyone on the estate.
I don't think that's, like, a negative against this character, though. I think that nothing is wrong with the way Jobin is written. His character, like, always feels it's doing what he's supposed to, aside from the fact that, like, how does he know certain things will work and stuff like that,
Right.
but that's besides the point. His actions always feel founded on his character.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
like, even when he dies prematurely, I don't think that's, like, a negative towards the story as it's currently presented. It's a bit sad that we don't get to see, like, a final Jobin arc or whatever. I think everything that we do see from Jobin is fantastic, especially in chapter 95. I think this, like, is on its own one of the best chapters in JoJolion, and ironically enough, it's the chapter that really has any Wonder Review, so. And speaking of Wonder Review...
Speaking of Wonder Review, okay. Okay, Future Shuck here, back to tell you the plan. I originally thought it would only be 2 parts, but our discussion about the Wonder Review is almost 20 minutes on its own, so you will see the final installment in this series very soon. Have a beautiful Duang, and I'll see you all next time.